Ukraine didn't ask for permission to sink the Black Fleet. So basically, we used long-range drones capacities to attack the Russian Black Fleet. And now, the Russian Black Fleet that used to be considered as the most powerful force on the Black Sea, you can find it only in two places, either on the bottom of the Black Sea or just cuddling to the shores of Russia.
Mr. Speaker, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. I want to start, I think, first of all, by asking what message President Zelensky will take to the White House tomorrow. What does the meeting with President Trump need to be about, and what would be a good outcome?
First of all, I believe that indeed, as you said, this is going to be a very important conversation, and I believe that the main message that President Zelensky will take to President Trump is that we need support, we need continued support, and we believe that President Trump has learned by now that Putin is a liar and he cannot be trusted, and at the same time the message that President Zelensky will bring President Trump is that we stand on the right side of history, but we need to have the continued support of our allies.
What should that support look like? The EU is discussing its 19th sanctions package at this point, and whenever we talk about this, our listeners get in touch with us saying, why not just do everything you can on economic sanctions? Why do it in stages and incrementally? If we're on round 19 of sanctions, should we think that they are not making any difference at all to Russia?
I totally agree with what you just said and with what your listeners are writing to you about. And indeed, we don't need to have and expect every new sanctions package as people expect, the launch of a new iPhone. We don't need sanctions 17, sanctions 18, sanctions 18 Pro, sanctions 18 Max. So we need just to have one package of sanctions that would break the economic backbone of Russia and would force Russia to sit to the table of negotiations.
Is it time for allies of Ukraine to step up their own aggression, I suppose? And I ask that because Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, said last night, Putin has got oil tankers that are breaking the sanctions, sink them. Should Ukraine's allies be trying to sink Russia's fleet?
Today, indeed, there's a great demand to make sure that we counter Putin's actions. He's acting like a criminal. He's just testing the limits of what else he will be allowed to do. And I believe that the response hasn't been resolute enough. If you look at what he's doing, if you look at the drone incursion into the airspace of NATO countries, if you look at his attempts to meddle with the elections in the NATO countries, if you look at his attempt to influence the decisions of the EU member states and NATO member states, basically, right now, I would say that Putin is incursing and getting into the things that he shouldn't be allowed to a much greater extent. So that's why we need an absolutely decisive, resolute response to his actions. And I'm talking about very strong sanctions. I'm talking about using Russia's frozen assets. This response really must be stepped up.
Would the sinking of Russia's grey fleet, as Boris Johnson seems to suggest, be a helpful and constructive part of that as far as Ukraine is concerned?
Look, Ukraine didn't ask for permission to sink the Black Fleet. So basically, we used long-range drones capacities to attack the Russian Black Fleet. And now, the Russian Black Fleet that used to be considered as the most powerful force on the Black Sea, you can find it only in two places, either on the bottom of the Black Sea or just cuddling to the shores of Russia. So I believe that this is just an example of how one should act with Russia. So the same approach must be taken when it comes to the shadow fleet of Russia. So it just means that our partners need to be more resolute and more brave because Russia is using the revenue from selling this oil, which basically it sells illegally, right? So it's using this revenue to fund the manufacture of drones and also to finance all its efforts when it's meddling into other countries' affairs. So yes, we must be more brave and we must be resolute.
Does President Trump need to give tomahawks to Ukraine during this meeting with President Zelensky tomorrow? Is that a sensible and helpful next step?
any strengthening of Ukraine, of course, will help to change the outcome of this war. And I'm talking about the technological assistance that we have been receiving. So with every new technology provided to Ukraine, we have been able to bring back and win back our territories from Russia. So whenever we have a technological edge over our enemy, we're able to bring back the territories. And basically, there's the mathematics of war. So if you look just mathematically, we cannot win the war of attrition, but that's why we need to win a technological war. And that's why Ukraine needs to have the technological advantage. At the same time, Ukraine already produces a lot of cutting-edge technologies that it developed itself, and I'm talking about the drones and anti-drone systems, and I'm talking about the overall logics and the methodology of waging a current modern warfare. And Ukraine is ready to export these technologies to our allies. You know, Ukraine was given 2 or 3 days to, stand to the Russian aggression. Now the war has entered its 4th year. It's almost 4 years since the start of the war. So I believe that Ukraine now has a lot to share with NATO, a lot of experience that it has gained over these years. We are ready to share this with our NATO allies.
A final question for you, Mr. Speaker. President Trump was in Jerusalem a few days ago to sign the peace deal between Israel and Hamas. During his time in the Knesset, in the Israeli parliament, it was said that they would be rallying the support of speakers of parliaments from around the world in order to nominate President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Will you be putting your name to that nomination?
I understand.
I personally was very happy to see President Trump declaring this peace agreement in the walls of the parliament, because the parliaments are the hearts of democracy. They represent our peoples. I can tell you this: if President Trump helps to bring peace to Ukraine, but I'm talking about the just and lasting peace, not capitulation, I personally will be very happy to give the floor of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine to President Trump to declare this peace in the walls of the Ukrainian parliament, and I will sign any document to this end if President Trump helps to ensure this just and lasting peace in Ukraine. So I'll be ready to sign it.
So it's fair to say that your nomination for President Trump is conditional on a just and lasting peace in Ukraine and for Ukraine.
That's the way it's supposed to be. President Trump really has this intention. He really wants to make sure that Ukraine achieves just and lasting peace. And I believe that by now he has realized that Ukraine is on the right side of history. And also he believes, and he has learned by now already, that Putin does not want to finish this war. But at the same time, President Trump knows that Russia can be made to make peace in Ukraine. So I believe that President Trump is ready to take all the efforts to make sure that there is just and lasting peace in Ukraine. And I know that President Trump is not trying to win the favors of all leaders of the parliaments to make sure that they sign, this petition to the Nobel Prize Committee. That's not his intention. I believe that when President Trump helps to ensure the just and lasting peace in Ukraine, this appeal to the Nobel Prize Committee will be signed by all the people of Ukraine.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.